Hi, it's Dwyer. It is April 23rd, 2025. Nothing I say in this video should be construed as investment advice. I want everyone to do their own due diligence. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now let's talk about the economy with the recognition that we're 3 months in to Donald Trump's second term as President of the United States. Let me make a few points here. Then I want to talk about an actual transaction that took place in San Francisco that shows the fragility of the economy and where we are, right? Because in my eyes, nothing gives you a better gauge of the economy than actual prices, right? That, have been negotiated by repeat players who understand market conditions. So first, let me say, just as an overview, a macro background. In these videos, it's very important to read the comments to the videos because they highlight divides in perspective. Now, there's a big question in the room, and it's worth a lot of money. The question is whether or not Bitcoin is a risk-on asset or, more importantly, a risk-off asset. In other words, if the market is going to hell in a handbasket, if I'm looking at Mag 7 stocks and even they are having a rough time of it, if I'm hearing that Tesla's profits are down 70% to such an extent that Elon Musk is now going to take time away from Doge to get back to his role shepherding Tesla. If I'm nervous about the future of the market, and I understand that stocks are still overvalued compared to the Buffett indicator, and that Warren Buffett has been hoarding cash, then I need to ask myself, where should I put my money as a safe haven? Now, many investors have answered that question. They have piled into gold, which is hovering around record highs, right? The silver crowd also is going to point out the historical gold-silver ratio. It's skewed right now. Silver looks like it's ready to explode. My point to you on this morning, where Bitcoin has bounced back and is up over $92,000 a coin. My point to you is that Bitcoin, which like gold is also limited supply, in fact, let's be real here. You can go out and make discoveries of new gold mines, right? Just like you can find new, oil situations, as they recently did in China. You're not going to be able to find any more new Bitcoin. It's 21 million, period, right? That number is not going to suddenly jump upward. In fact, you and I know many Bitcoin have been lost. People have forgotten their passwords. People got Bitcoin, don't know where it is, may have thrown the computer away. It's limited supply assets like Bitcoin, whose adoption is increasing, right? Even laws are bending toward Bitcoin's favor, that in my opinion are risk-off assets. Right now, historical types, God bless them all, will point out that Bitcoin has fluctuated with the general NASDAQ historically. In other words, the argument is, how could it possibly be risk-off if it's going up and down with the market? And the answer from my seat is that that's because investors are unfamiliar with Bitcoin. That's because there's a lot of doubt about Bitcoin. a lot of uncertainty about Bitcoin, and that as investors become more informed, Bitcoin is going to behave more as a risk off asset. So I want people to track Bitcoin here. It's bumped up in the last 48 hours. I believe there's going to, over time, be a growing realization that Bitcoin is really the ultimate risk off asset, right? If you reach that conclusion, there are huge profits to be made. First off, many people are fleeing Bitcoin. They're saying, hey, the general economy has become riskier. I need to leave the speculative asset. I need to migrate to gold and silver, right? As they're fleeing the burning building, you're able to walk in, buy Bitcoin at today's discounted price. Yes, it's discounted, right? And you have a discounted risk-off asset that's going to probably grow faster than the growth of gold, right? And I understand central banks are buying a lot of gold right now, Russia, China. Just understand they'll be buying a lot of Bitcoin going forward. Get ahead of that development. At least that's what I'm trying to do. Let me also make another point to you. When you owe the world $36 trillion, as the United States does, then one of the most important markets to maintain is the bond market. Right? Understand the United States uses the bond market to fund its debt. They can't allow a default, right? If it takes financial repression, if it takes artificially imposing low rates on the dollar, then that's what they're going to do, right? Whatever is said, however good the politician on TV sounds, understand that's what they're going to do. It's no different than a debtor with big credit card debt doing whatever they can to pay that bill every month and to maintain their credit rating. Because they understand that if they miss a payment, the interest rate on their credit card debt is going to skyrocket. They'll owe a lot more each month. Not only that, if they blow their credit rating, then they understand that their access to credit is going to dry up and they'll have to live within their means. Right? The United States doesn't want any of that to happen. If you're trying to figure out the future of the market, study the bond market. Now let's talk about the recent transaction at 199 Fremont Street in San Francisco. I want people to figure out that the building that was sold is prime commercial real estate in San Francisco. I also want people to look at the price difference between just a few years ago, right? It's 2025. We're going to go back to 2020, just 5 years ago, and now, right? Also, I want folks to pay close attention to who owned the building in the past. It's going to include some pension funds, who of course have a fiduciary duty to their beneficiaries, right? And who of course try to invest in, we'll use quotes here, safe assets, like commercial real estate. Folks, that was the thinking just 5 years ago. So I'm going to read a passage from the San Francisco Chronicle. I'm in the Bay Area. I'm a Chronicle subscriber. And I just want people to listen to the passage, right? Figure out exactly what's happening, not just in this transaction, but in commercial real estate in San Francisco. Right? Understand, whether or not politicians or the press want to admit it, one of the big stories in finance is always the unrealized gains and the unrealized losses that exist in the economy. Right? The situation with this building is one of many, right? Because, of course, when we're talking about market prices, if you believe that commercial real estate in San Francisco is accurately reflected in the prices of this transaction, then you understand that the owners of commercial real estate throughout San Francisco are sitting on huge, and I mean huge, unrealized losses that threaten the banking system of Northern California, right? Understand, San Francisco is one of the major financial hubs of the United States. With that said, let me read the passage. Understand, this deal just happened, right? This passage is from, let's say, 48 hours ago in the San Francisco Chronicle. Divik West also had a 49% stake in the building with partner CALSTRS, right? Understand, pension group. Other previous owners included an AFL-CIO pension fund and Manova Partners. The 25-story, 420,000 square foot building sold for around $265 per square foot, far less than the roughly $900. Let me repeat that, $900 per square foot that Divco and CalSTRS paid in 2020 for its previous stake. The building's next to Salesforce Park. That's a park in San Francisco that's 4 stories above street level, right? It's one of the better parks in San Francisco. In other words, this is prime real estate. It's next to Salesforce Park and was previously leased to Fitbit, now part of Google and StubHub. Right, let me make a few points here, folks. So this prime piece of California's commercial real estate just sold for $265 per square foot after having been worth $900 per square foot within the last 5 years. Right? The sales price is less than a third of what it was 5 years ago. Right? Let me also say, too, we have a pension crisis. We have one in California. When I talk about it with my friends, their eyes glaze over. Right? Who cares that there are pension shortfalls if today's beneficiaries are getting paid? Well, how about future beneficiaries? Right? Why would I, a young person, contribute to an upside-down pension fund if, after years of giving to the fund, they either don't pay me or they pay me back with watered-down dollars? Right? What's in it for me? Does the pension fund have integrity? Well, folks, it might shock some people, but here in California, right, CalPERS is underwater, right? It's underfunded by more than 10%. Let's pick a number that everyone agrees on, right? Between you and me, I suspect it's underfunded by about 20% or so. Well, just understand, that's not even including There are investment holdings that are similar to this one, where you own a building, but what you own is worth less than 1/3 what it was worth 5 years ago. Now, accountants can be magicians, right? But understand, this is a big hole. And the more real estate deals, and this is one of the biggest, this is a $111 million deal. As more real estate deals happen throughout San Francisco, these losses are going to have to be realized. And as the losses are realized, let's just do the math. 900 minus 265, this deal has a loss attached of $635 million. And this is one deal. If you're a pension fund beneficiary, you need to ask yourself a hard question, right? If the losses are realized, how solvent is my pension fund? If you're a commercial lender, and understand, real estate mortgages are different than residential mortgages, right? You lock in a good rate on a residential real estate deal, you can say, okay, I have 30 years of runway. I have 30 years to figure this out, right? If it's fixed, then great. As interest rates rise in the economy, you're getting your house on favorable terms, right? In real estate, many of these loans are rolled over every 5 years. So understand, as interest rates jump, that increases the incentive for a commercial real estate holder who already is looking at losses to say to the lender, here are the keys to the building, right? No mas. This is a money loser. You go ahead and foreclose. Good luck. Right, folks? To the banks holding the paper on these commercial real estate assets, how many such losses can they endure? Right, so I want folks to understand what's coming. What's coming is the increasing realization of commercial real estate losses. Right, folks? San Francisco is a glamour city. When we talk about the Mag 7, we're talking about many California-based companies. Right? Understand, this building was previously leased to Fitbit, which of course is now part of Google. You're talking about big-time tenants. And in that market, you have a major real estate sale that has a greater than 60% loss attached to it. And of course, for the pension crowd, some of the people involved, right? Folks who owned the building in the past, right? People realizing the losses are pension funds, right? The financial sophisticates that you thought were running your pension might not be that brilliant. Let me also add another truth to this. And let me just say, in my other life, I'm a divorce attorney. In other words, I'll talk with professionals. And we'll talk about support issues that involve their future earnings, right? And people will flatly tell me, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be with this employer, right? Understand, employers here in the Bay Area are trying to impose back to the office mandates on workers, right? Newsflash, no one wants to work at the office. Everyone wants to work from home, right? Let me just say, COVID, and I know There was panic. I understand. There were health concerns. We didn't quite know how dangerous the COVID virus was, right? There was a pandemic. But leaders need to think about all of the fallout before they make decisions. The COVID lockdown destroyed the commercial real estate market, right? Just understand that because of COVID, because people were unable to go to the office, because that was the law of the land, right, in places outside of Florida, what that did is that caused people to come into a habit of working from home. That caused people to realize that they could work from home and the business would not fall apart. Right, folks? It's going to take generations to unring that bell. Right? A lot of people who used to work in downtown San Francisco are now staying at home. If I'm a startup and I'm trying to recruit talent and I'm interviewing great people and they say to me, hey, do I get to work from home? And I'm thinking, wow, this person's skill set would be great for the company. Right? Folks, the demand side to work from home is going to impact those discussions. Right? Startups are going to say, yes, you can work from home. Particularly if they do the math and realize that they get to save the money that would have gone to maintaining office space for you. Right? How much longer is it going to take for downtown areas involving a workforce that is increasingly working from home to bounce back? Folks, it's going to take a long time. Understand, too, the layout of these buildings. They can't just suddenly declare that they're condominiums because the layouts don't allow it, right? If you're buying a condo, you're thinking to yourself, okay, great, I want 2 bathrooms, right, folks? These buildings aren't made in a way where, every 1,000 feet or so has 2 bathrooms, right? You have some offices that don't have windows in these office buildings that were built years ago, right? No one's going to buy the condo that doesn't have views. What's the point of living in San Francisco if I don't get to look out a window and see the city? Right? So just understand, I believe ultimately many of these buildings are going to be torn down. They're going to have to be rebuilt because they're not going to be able to attract commercial tenants. Right? The losses are such that the bank is going to end up with many of these buildings. Right? The real estate does have infrastructure. You are downtown, you have mass transit, you have bus lines, you have live entertainment. Going to watch the San Francisco Giants or the Golden State Warriors is just a hop, skip, and a jump away. You can look out, see Bay Bridge. You can look over here, see Golden Gate Bridge. You say, wow, these are breathtaking views. They're singular views. This is where I want to live. Right? But just understand the infrastructure is going to have to be blown up. Right? Modern day condo buildings are going to ultimately replace many of these commercial real estate properties that are no longer viable. Right? So just understand the haircut on this deal. It's above 60%. Let me also say, too, among the unrealized losses is the hit that's going to take place to the pension market once all the losses are realized. As you can imagine, if your pension fund says, hey, we're going to invest in some commercial real estate, many people at the fund are going to say, no, 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 been there, done that. All I got was the t-shirt, and it cost me an arm and a leg. Right? Pension funds are going to be hesitant to invest in commercial real estate, and that's going to put a further downward pressure on commercial real estate prices. So take a look at this transaction. Let me give the address again. It's the one involving the building at 199 Fremont Street in San Francisco. Folks, you're going to hear about many more deals like this as commercial real estate rolls over, right? The full extent of the losses have not yet been realized by the investors and by their lenders. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.